Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome. It being 6 p.m, I now declare the ordinary meeting of council for January open. Record of attendance, I think we have a full house here in terms of councillors. Any apologies? No. Leave of absence required. Anyone? No. Are there any responses to previous public questions taken on notice? Yes,
No, Mr. Chairman.
I always do the acknowledgement, and the Shire of Capel acknowledges the traditional custodians, the Wadandi people, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to members of all communities and cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Public question time. Now, I've had a question from a Mr. K. Hurley from North Boynup, but I'm not allowing that one because it contains a rather defamatory allegation. But he does have a... well, anyway, as I said, I won't be allowing that question, but we will take your question, your second question, if you'd like to do that. But if you, we wouldn't. No, the second question. Yeah, there's a second question, isn't there?
All right. Second question.
You need to turn the. Sorry, just turn the microphone on.
I've got a pile of questions, but the second question will be, is how much does it cost the ratepayers of this Shire for a school bus to come down Christmas Street Court and damage the road? They've fixed it up twice, and how many thousands of dollars does it cost when there's a designated bus stop around the corner?
Acting CEO, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. Over the past 5 financial years, no money has been spent on that road, and it's otherwise a road with low utilisation. However, I can advise that in the forthcoming financial year, the council's draft budget will show an amount of $50,000 for a reseal from 0 kilometre SLK to 1.557 SLK. I must stress that any money that I'm talking about at the moment is still subject to council adoption of the budget for next financial year.
All right, so nothing has been done in the last 5 years to your knowledge. Well, I've got the freedom of information to say it has.
Mr. Chairman, no funds have been spent.
No. Okay, Mr. Hurley,
And
you have your answer. Thank you very much.
All right, now, who do I give the writ to for the district court?
That's not a question that we can answer. So,
Well, you're all here.
No,
I said I was coming to
that's
give it
not
to
a
you.
question for council. Now, would you regain your seat, please?
So you're not going to accept the writ?
No.
That's because somebody lied, didn't they, Tom?
Mr. B. Hasties.
Afternoon, councillors and civilians. I'll refer to the item of 15.1 of tonight's agenda regarding the annual electors meeting to be held at the Dalyalup Community Centre to be held on 3rd of March 2021. The Dalyalup Community Centre is not an appropriate venue for the annual electors meeting because of insufficient parking bays. Would the council please consider holding the annual electors meeting at Boynup or Capel where there is ample parking facilities? Thank you.
There is more parking available at the Dalyalup Community Centre than there is at the Hugh Kilpatrick Hall in Boynup. So the premise of your question and the statement you made is incorrect. We have booked the AGM in for Dalyalup this year because that is the location where the largest number of electors live. I'm sure consideration can be given to moving the AGM to Boynup next year. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll accept that. Thank you.
Mr Wilkes of Stratham. No, not here. Well, it's not really a question anyway, so we haven't missed much. So if there's no more questions from the floor, we'll move on to the next item, which is applications for leave of absence. None? Okay. Declarations of interest I have here. I have a declaration of interest in item 11.1 from both Councillor Scott and Councillor Kitchen. That is Councillor Kitchen's is an impartiality and Councillor Scott's is a financial interest. I have a declaration of interest from Councillor Scott in item 14.2, financial interest. And I have a declaration of interest from Councillor Andrew in 14.6, which is a proximity interest. Yep. So we'll have a motion on recording of the vote of all members present before we take any votes. And that would be that in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995, section 5.214, the vote of all members present be recorded following each vote at this meeting of council. Councillor Noonan, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favour? That's accepted and carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, where are we? Confirmation of minutes. We're looking at the confirmation of minutes for the Ordinary Council meeting on the 16th of December 2020. Do I have a mover? Councillor Andrew, seconded Councillor Clues. Any discussion, any changes anyone thinks need to be done? If that's the case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move to announcement by the presiding person. And I do have an announcement to make tonight. It has occurred to me in the past couple of weeks that we're seeing here, and especially tonight, some of the effects of a worldwide shift which seems to be occurring in our social discourse and politics. And it's what's known as cancel culture. I've felt the effects of this, and I think it's a shame that we've gone that way. One of the great things about this beautiful country of ours is that we value, cherish and protect our democratic institutions. The various levels of government, our judiciary and our laws have been trusted for generations to help keep Australian society on the right path, one of fairness, justice, equity and respect. Within those structures, which include this Shire Council, there are systems and processes which are always being refined and improved to ensure that this organisation does the best job possible, fulfilling its important role in the community and meet the challenges and changes that come with the changing times. People who from time to time find roles on council or its various committees are simply temporary servants to this larger, more important dynamic and the ongoing benefits we all derive from it. Councillors, for example, have an integral role to play in this structure, having been elected to perform this task for a set amount of time, diligently and to the best of our ability and judgment. Inevitably, we will be replaced with others, but the Shire will continue to fulfil its role. No individual is ever above or more important than the organisation. So I urge people to understand that when one of us places an item on the agenda for a council meeting, like tonight, we're doing nothing more than giving our colleagues notice that we wish them to consider and debate an issue before perhaps taking a vote on it. Nothing can be done here and no decisions are made without majority consent. It would, in my view, be a poor local government where councillors did not at least try to provide leadership and suggest actions needed which they think could find improvements or protect the integrity of our processes. The alternative would be to allow council to be led by officers and simply provide a rubber stamp to plans and decisions brought forward by unelected staff. Nor should a council be cowed into not taking necessary action by the strident voices of a few, some with vested interests. So it has been disappointing for me to witness in the past week or so people who have sought to personalise the issues behind the item I have placed in tonight's agenda, ignoring the reasons for it and instead resorting to abuse and attacks on me. Some of them apparently seeking to cancel me. I've been called all sorts of names and repeatedly accused of conducting a vendetta. That is not true. And it's a slander of me which cannot be backed up by any objective look at the facts. People have a right to voice their opinions and object to things publicly, but such objections should be rational, measured and fact-based, hopefully. Recent proposals regarding roles within Council's Bushfire Advisory Committee, which I have put to my fellow councillors, emerge from a fundamental principle that anyone holding office in an organisation, paid or unpaid, should be accountable for their actions and answerable to the organisation they serve. To suggest otherwise, to propose that a few be held above those principles, to suggest that they are somehow exempt from scrutiny or accountability because of past good behaviour or long associations, is something I do not accept. It is interesting, I think, if you go to key Shire of Capel documents and on our website, the list under the heading Our Values begins with accountability. Nevertheless, notwithstanding everything I've just said, it has become apparent there are now bigger considerations at stake. No one likes to see a community divided, and this council cannot function properly and in an orderly fashion if it remains the subject of loud, ongoing criticism and unrest. Perhaps there is another, better way to ensure we reach the goal we all want, which is simply the safe, effective operation of our bushfire brigades, and especially the safety of the firefighters involved. Just as nobody should be placed above the organisation they serve, my beliefs in how best to serve the community are not more important than the ability of this council to continue with the confidence and support of those it represents. I therefore will not put forward the motion foreshadowed in tonight's agenda in relation to the October 25 fire incident investigation. I hope people will understand that councillors, myself included, are simply normal, law-abiding local people with families, most of us with children, who believe we're here because we believe we can make a contribution. I don't mind criticism, but I do object to malicious and particularly sustained personal abuse. These constant... I'll just have a drink of water. These constant public attacks on me, I can actually stand. But there is an obviously an impact on my wife and children. For this reason, I have decided I will not be seeking re-election in the local government elections in October this year. So you've won. For the sake of this community going forward, I urge people to remain kind and respectful. Seek to understand and perhaps try talking to people, put things in context rather than reacting to hearsay, and refrain, please, from joining any angry mob you see gathering on social media. Finally, I'd like to thank all of the friends, colleagues and members of the community who have contacted me over the past week or so to offer their support and encouragement. Thank you. Now we move to petitions, deputations and presentations. We have a petition, I believe. The Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, A petition. In accordance with the Shire of Capel Standing Orders Local Law 2016 Clause 4.9, the Acting Chief Executive Officer received a petition on 19 January 2021 in the form prescribed in the Standing Orders from Ms Nola Prowse of Boynup, signed by 579 persons. The statement of facts and the action sought on the front page reads, quote, "We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the Council rejects the proposal in the motion of item 11.1 in the agenda for the Ordinary Council meeting of 20th of January 21, removal of committee member. The motion does not truly reflect the community's desires and lacks sufficient due diligence to warrant such an action. It smacks of judge, jury and executioner and does not allow the individual any right of reply. The purpose of any investigation such as this should be to seek background to an event and obtain learnings. This should not be an investigation in which individuals who have already made themselves available to provide statements regarding the North Boynup fire are pursued or criticised for following the advice of their volunteer fire brigade association. Murray Scott is a valued, long-serving and skilled volunteer who is a well-respected leader in our community. He should not be subjected to this public abuse of his stature and position in the community." Mr Chairman, the Council has a number of alternatives available to it under standing orders. I suggest that the petition be acknowledged and be dealt with by the Council in conjunction with item 11.1 on today's Ordinary Council meeting agenda.
Would anyone like to so move? Councillor Noonan. Seconder. Councillor Sciano. Councillor Noonan.
I concur with the CEO's recommendation.
Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr President. I concur with Councillor Noonan and the CEO's recommendation.
Okay, if there's no further discussion for or against, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move to motions of which previous notice has been given, which is 11.1, which as I've said before, I'll refrain from. The other one is 11.2. And this motion is regarding beach facilities within the Shire of Capel. And I'm moving that this council requests the acting CEO to prepare 1. A report on the cost and feasibility of upgrading the beach access facilities at the eastern end of Peppermint Grove Beach to include a boat launching facility suitable for small marine craft. 2. A discussion paper or presentation for council providing options and preliminary budget estimates on the following. A. Upgrades or improvements to access, parking, signage and public toilet facilities at all existing Capel Shire beach facilities. B. Upgrades or improvements to beach four-wheel drive access points, including signage and measures to mitigate against, control or police illegal vehicles accessing prohibited areas. Councillor Mogg, seconded. I think it's pretty self-explanatory that I'd like to kick off this discussion with this motion, and we'll get reports and we'll get feedback and we'll go from there. Do I have Councillor Mogg?
Thank you, Councillor Southwell. Talking to Peppy Grove community and Stratham the like along our beachways, especially at the moment Peppy Grove with holiday makers and the extra traffic of vehicles people uses, people are not abiding by signs and beach use and the concerns for safety there, and I'm really just happy to see this motion come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question, first of all, if I may, through the chair to the acting CEO. I think it's probably prudent that we time frame these things. Can you suggest a month that would be a good time frame for staff to provide this report?
Excellent question. Mr. Chairman, I need to ask whether it was expected potentially for this to come up in the next financial year coming. If so, we probably need we probably need a report by the March meeting of the council. The Director of Infrastructure Services will need to get on with this, so I'd be suggesting the ordinary council meeting of March 2021.
Thank you. Then, if I may move an amendment, please.
Go ahead.
We'll simply add point 3, reports be provided to council for the March ordinary council meeting.
I'll second that. Any discussion on that amendment? Adding that point? No? We'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of adding that point to the thing? That's carried unanimous. That becomes a substantive motion. Do I have any more discussion? Councillor Noonan.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just wondering, we had a very good submission from Mr. Patrick Scullen in regard to this issue, the beach access, and I'm just wondering whether it would pay to perhaps advertise it for inviting Capel residents who had a particular view to also, if they wish to make submissions, to do so before a given date.
If that's a question to me, which I think it is, like that sounds like a question. Is it a question? Is it a question to me?
It's. I'd like to.
I could answer
phrase that as a motion.
Oh,
as an amendment. Sorry.
an amendment
to the motion.
Okay.
To add a public consultation period.
Okay. So so that we can get the wording of the amendment, can you explain that for us?
So I'd like to propose an amendment item 2B, 2D. So it'll be isn't C? I thought was. Oh, 3. Okay. That council or that CEO on the council website advertise a public submission period for, or invite public submissions for a period of 1 month. In relation to beach access. I think just doing it through the website would suffice.
Councillor Noonan, not ready for the debate yet.
Correct.
Councillor Noonan, is that
Yes.
satisfactory? Is that your amendment? You've moved that. Do I have a seconder? No, we don't have a seconder, so that one lapses. So we go back to the what has become the substantive motion. Does anyone want to speak for or against that motion? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do speak in favour of the motion. I suppose it's okay having the deadline on the report, but just to sort of some other comments that have been made, it would be good to look at this, have a report first and look at it in context with the strategic community plan, which will be due back, and there'll be a bit of, I suppose, insight in that. And then once we've got a report as well, if it needs to go out for comment, if there's a bit of a groundswell around it, then I suppose it can at that point. But I'm happy to support a report in the time being, just to see who's responsible in this area and also potential costs, and then look at it with our strategic community plan and go forward from there.
Yeah, I'd also like to speak in favour of it. And what I was going to say, if it was, if Councillor Noonan's amendment was put to me as a question, was I was going to suggest that when the preliminary report does come back to us at the March ordinary council meeting, people interested parties would be able to come and make presentations to us on the night before we consider it, and that would be a way for us to get feedback from interested or knowledgeable parties that wish to have an input. Otherwise, I support it. Councillor, anyone else? No. In that case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That seems to be carried unanimously. Thank you. Chief Executive Officer reports. Item 14.1, Bushfire Advisory Committee minutes from the 15th December 2020. I think you, let's see, here they are. You better have those. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clues. Seconder, Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Clues?
Move it as read. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Kitchen? Anyone else? Okay, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour of adopting, thank you. Carried unanimously. Received. Those minutes are received. 14.2, the Bushfire Advisory Committee. Councillor Scott has declared an interest and is leaving the room. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kitchen. Seconder, Councillor Clues. Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's just a very straightforward tidy up of our Bushfire Advisory Committee, and pleased to see the addition of deputy members in there as well. Thank you.
Okay, who's the seconder? Councillor? No? Any further discussion? Councillor Noonan, you have your microphone on. Are you ready to go? Or
Yes, Mr. President, just making the point that it's not in relation to the recommendation, so it's not part of the motion, but in the background proposal, Phil Allen, the training coordinator, should be listed as part of the existing BFAC membership. He's been left off that list. And Andrina, the Council Emergency Services Coordinator, she should also be on that list.
okay, so acting CEO, can we do that as an administrative task rather than you're here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So the motion stands as it is. We'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Absolute majority. 7. Yes, so that's been achieved. So 14.3 is Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendations. And do I have a mover for those? Councillor Kitchen. Seconder. Councillor Sciano. Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And it was a fairly robust meeting of the Bushfire Advisory Committee. We got in there, we reviewed the incident, and we've moved forward. And I commend the motion to the Council.
Councillor Clues. Sorry, it should be Councillor Sciano, seconder first.
Just very shortly, thank you, Mr. President. I guess at the end of the day, the committee is probably one of our most cherished experts and advisors in this area. Councillors have obviously had the opportunity to review the report and investigation themselves, and so have the committee. So happy to accept the officer's recommendation.
Any other speakers? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question, if I may, and I apologise through the Chair to the CEO if it's putting him on the spot a bit. It's a question I had earlier in the piece, and I think I've heard the same come back from the community. So perhaps if someone could just clarify the reasoning for the confidentiality of that report for the public, that'd be appreciated.
Mr. President, that earlier report was classified by the previous acting Chief Executive Officer as confidential. If you want an opinion from me, I think that was a proper and correct decision at the time, as issues were still being sorted out. But I have now come to the conclusion that it's okay for public dissemination.
Thank you.
I also have a question. So if we receive confidential reports and letters and things, well, we've received them, where do they go? And if they are confidential and no one can look at them, what's the effect?
Mr. Chairman, the confidential is more for identification purposes at this stage rather than anything else, so that there's no doubt what we were talking about in the past, as it's always been classified as confidential, but that doesn't have to remain in place.
So what would be the mechanism that could be used to lift the confidentiality?
Mr. Chairman, these attachments will become attachments to the minutes of this meeting, which is a public meeting held in public.
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting at. So when they do become the attachments to this public meeting, there's no more confidentiality, is that right?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Is that what you understood? I didn't get it. Okay. Anyone else like to speak for or against this motion? No. Well, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Scott, you in favour? And those against? That's carried 7-1. We move to item 14.4. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mogg. Seconded Councillor Sciano. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Councillor Southwell. I put it forward as read and very excited to see and pass this motion. Ask Council for support. Daryella are looking forward to completion of the town centre, I think.
Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a huge milestone for the Dale-up community. It has been on the agenda for Dale-up for so many, many years. The consultation leading through this project has been fantastic, and today to be able to advise that we'll take management of that site and to hopefully deliver on our promise over the next 12 months to begin works and continue from there. And the commitment from the state government is very welcomed as well to accommodate that site along with the skate park and the community purpose centre. This is one of the, I think, could be the largest milestone in Dale-up's development in the last 5 years. And I'm more than ecstatic. I may not seem it right now, but I'm more than ecstatic to see that we're at this point and that the project can move forwards. And obviously I look for all my colleagues' support tonight, and thank you for your support so far.
Do I have any other speakers for or against the motion? If not, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. 14.5, Building Better Regions Fund. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mogg. Seconded Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Councillor Southwell. I put forward the motion as read. These infrastructure are much needed within our Shire.
The Kitchen.
Pretty exciting stuff, replacing the existing public toilets. But they are one of probably our most highest patronised toilets in the district, particularly the Lions Park there. I think that's the highest one. So it'll be good to see some newer facilities there, improve the area, the aesthetics of the area, and hopefully bring some more tourist travel into the district. Thank you.
Just my comment is that it might sound trivial, but when you need them, they're probably the most important infrastructure that you'll have in the Shire. Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not speaking against, but do have a question through you in regards to the Ironstone Gully 4 toilets. Apologies if I've missed it, but it's currently a drop toilet. Was the scope to improve the state of those bathrooms? And if so, do we see any future issues with Council's position on developing Ironstone Gully Falls, considering Council has pushed back on the development of that area previously due to additional work that's required to make it a registered campsite? I'm not sure who that would need to be directed to, but first of all asking what the scope of the actual project is, and secondly what impact that will have on Council's previous decision at Ironstone.
Yeah, I think I can handle pretty well that question. The first part is that they will all be the same. Apparently they're these pre-fabricated modular drop-in style facilities now, so they will all be the same. There won't be a like-for-like replacement. And the second part of your question, I don't think is relevant to this this motion. I think we're off on a tangent there. So that's my answer to your question.
No, thank you, Mr. President. That does answer the question. I just wanted to ensure, obviously, because about classification and things like that, that it may have impacted the way that we manage the site. But I'm content with the answer that I've received.
Anyone else for or against? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question. On Monday, when we discussed this item, we talked about adding the Bunbury to Busselton cycle link. I'm just wondering whether that's a possibility, what the conclusion of that discussion was.
Sorry, Councillor Noonan. Look, I think the situation is that was discussed. That was thrown around the room at the agenda briefing, and I think there was obviously wasn't enough time to do the work required to get it to the point where it could be included in this motion. But it is open to you to move an amendment in that respect. But I think it's probably a bit on the run. Would be my view of it at this point.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would actually like to move that as an amendment, and the reason for moving it as an amendment is that it helps to put it on the radar. Right now, with the elections coming up, it's a good time to be letting the respective political parties know that there are certain things which Capel, as a shire, would like to see happen. So my proposed amendment is that we add Bunbury to Busselton cycle link as the first item and move the subsequent numbers down.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Clues. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I've spoken to the point. The worst thing that can happen is that the Building Better Regions Fund says, no, we haven't got enough information, but thank you very much for your submission. And what that also does, it puts it on the radar for next year, for the next round of submissions, when we perhaps have more information, and it'll give us a guideline as to what additional information we do need to present to them for this item.
Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd actually like to speak against the amendment. I think that the worst thing it actually does is will force the staff to do a hell of a lot of work in a period of time, not allowing of the work to be done, taking them away from other tasks. I think this, I don't want to take away from the cycle path plan. It is a fantastic, fantastic thing that I cannot wait to be looking at. I'd love to be looking at that through a separate item to council, not through an amendment. That's going to be its own. That's going to be its own beast and take a lot of time from a lot of staff and from us in the planning stages. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that cycle path happening, and I want it near the top of the list. But I don't think this is the time or the way to do it.
Any other speakers? Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just before I speak, could I just suggest one change to the movers and seconders, if they could approve it, just to make it Bunbury / Capel / Busselton cycle path. It's 27 k's of it's in our district, so I think we need to be on its name. So if the mover and seconder are happy to agree to that.
Yes. Good idea. Thank you, Doug. Well done.
Seconder agrees, so we'll make that change.
Plus,
We
yeah.
just make that change. So Kitchen, you can continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a bit of pride of the district in that one there. But I have to concur with the comments of Councillor Clues, though. I agree entirely with the project, but I don't think it would meet the deadline of this particular funding round. As far as I'm aware, there's only a sort of rough route selection. There's no engineering details available to the path just yet. So I think it's certainly on the radar. I mean, it's the second time it's been discussed within 3 days. I think it's going to move forward. I think we need to talk to the other local governments, get support and move forward as a unit, instead of just pushing from one local government. And yeah, just the time constraints on it, though, I don't think make it worth the effort just at this time.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against this amendment? No. We'll put the amendment to the vote then. Should that change be made? Those in favour? Those against? It's one, and it's lost 1-7, I think it is. Back to the substantive motion without the addition of number one, new number one. Any other speakers on the substantive motion? Yeah, if not, we'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Carried. Thank you. 14.6, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program. For the Councillor Andrew is going to leave the room for a proximity interest. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clues. Seconded Councillor Kitchen. Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just move it as read.
Councillor Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd have to say something just because I do love when we do some roadworks around the district. Great to see this project brought a couple of years forward, and the funding coming from the federal government. It will provide a windfall in other areas in our long-term financial plan to move some other projects forward, as well as compensate for some other funding stimulus that this Shire has performed. But very happy to see this come forward. I've heard quite a few good comments from the section, stage 1, that's already been completed from the local residents, and it's just another tick in the box that shows that this local government is committed to its assets and will look after them. Thank you.
Do I have any other speakers for or against? No, we'll put that to the vote. That's carried, unanimous, 7. Thank you. Moving on to Community and Corporate Reports, and item 15.1, if we can have Councillor Andrew back. That would be the annual report for the Shire of Capel for 2019-20. Do I have anyone who'd like to move the officer recommendation that to that as it's written there? Councillor Sciano, seconded Councillor Clues. Councillor Sciano.
Thank you, Mr. President. I felt the need that this probably did need to be moved and seconded. I know that there are some feelings towards the time allocated to be able to review the report, but obviously I think we need to be able to discuss those and potentially have this on the table so that we could make a decision moving forwards on how we're going to deal with this. I have had an opportunity to do a read through the annual report. I understand, unlike other councillors, I luckily did have the opportunity today to have time to have a look through that. From my view, I'm confident in the report. I think the first sections of the annual report are always very similar, and they contain a statutory structure to how they address different topics within the community, and it's really about showcasing and understanding what the Shire has been up to. The financial reports, of course, we have seen to some regards previously, but I completely understand if other councillors haven't had that opportunity due to the time frame that we were given to address the report. For the members of the community, we did only receive this this printed copy in front of us very early this afternoon, I think around midday. So some of us have been at work. I was lucky enough to be home by 12 and have a look. So yeah, happy to have a debate. Mainly wanted to move this to be able to put this on the table so that we can have a discussion.
Anyone else like to speak for or against? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you. I agree, Councillor Scarno. It is a bit concerning, but this report needs to be dealt with tonight because it needs to be in before next month's meeting, as I understand. So we've been forced into a bit of a rush job for me. I'm not happy that I haven't had more time to look at it, but at the end of the day, I think we need to probably take a bit of the responsibility for the fact we're in that position. So yeah, we need to probably lift our own game and make life a little bit easier around the place to ensure that we're getting the time that we need to look at these things.
Yeah, just I'd like to add that I just urge and encourage people to obtain a copy, probably off our website is probably the easiest way, I assume. Certainly in the attachment, it will be in the attachments to the minutes tonight. Urge people to have a look at it, read it, and check out whatever aspects you're interested in, and to by all means attend the general meeting of electors and ask questions ask questions and become involved. Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I would like to apologise to councillors that this has been a little bit late in getting to you. I want to assure you that although it's a little bit late, it's not a rush job. In accepting the report tonight, although we are unable to make any major changes, should any councillor over the next couple of days pick up any typos, and some of you have already mentioned some of them to me, please make me aware of them, where they are and what they are, and we can still make those minor amendments. But tonight, yes, and I apologise for this, it is necessary for the report to be accepted.
Councillor Clues, you have a question?
Thank you, because I'm not sure how else to do this. My sincere apologies. I absolutely have faith that the staff have not rushed this whatsoever. The rush is on me in the time I've got to get through it in the before tonight's meeting. That wasn't my intention to consider the report rushed in general.
Okay. Just for future reference, that sounds like a personal explanation which you can make under the standing orders. Anyway.
My apologies.
So we'll put that to the vote then. Those in favour? Is that everyone? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Carried. 15.2, the Audit Committee. I have a mover. Councillor Andrew. Seconder. Councillor Noonan. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. I'll move the motion as read. Thank you, Councillor Southwell. I would just like to speak to the motion. So firstly, as the Chair of the Audit Committee, I'd like to notably acknowledge the hard work of Anne Bell, Andrew Mattaboni and Susan Stevenson and the rest of the finance team, the effort that they've put in to get the 2019-2020 audit requirements completed on time, and to the satisfaction of the Office of the Auditor General. With the disruptions caused early in the year by COVID-19 and the amendments to the local government financial management regs, it was a pleasant surprise to come in December and discover that our 19-20 audit requirements have been completed on time. It's actually a feat that most local councils haven't been able to achieve this year. Most of them have had to apply for an extension, so our staff have done a fabulous job. All three reports, being the Regulation 17 review, the audits report and the financial management review, were all presented to the audit committee in December, accepted by the committee, and I don't think there were really any issues even raised around the table when we discussed them. So it was a great job all round.
Yes, I'd just like to add to that it was quite an impressive audit process, and the committee had an easy time of it this year, and the audit report was basically a very good report and reflected well on our processes and the people involved. Councillor Noonan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. It's not often that you get complimented by the auditor, being one of the first local councils to be in and one of the most accurate, problem-free that they found. So that was a really good to see. Well done.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. 15.3, the financial statements for the 31st of December 2020. Any mover there? Councillor Kitchen, seconded Councillor Clues. Councillor Kitchen, anything to add? Nothing? I think we can put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 16 we're on to, which is new business of an urgent nature. Now we have it. You have a copy. Does everyone have a copy? No? Sorry, Councillor Monk. No, that's because this is a running sheet and that's the agenda. Okay, I'll just assume you have that in front of you, and I'd like to have a mover, Councillor Clues, seconder, Councillor Andrew. So what we should do is we should suspend as much of standing orders as is required to, I'll move that we suspend as much of standing orders as is required to get the names of people who would like to fill those gaps in item 4C and be a part of the committee. Seconded Councillor Mogg. Any dissension on that, suspending those portions of standing orders that apply? No? Well, in that case, those in favour, I think we need a vote. That's carried unanimously. And I would ask you to indicate if you are keen to be a part of this committee. So we have nearly everyone except Councillor Scott and myself. So I'll ask the CEO, how should we proceed?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't turn that on. When we have more members who want to be a member of a committee, we're required to do it as if it were an election. So we need to do a first past the post election. So we need to get some paper written up with 6 names on it, and then we'll have to have a vote with 4 marks on each ballot paper.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll just count them up.
The alternative, before I take a question from Councillor Clues, because what I'm about to say may preempt it, the alternative to proceeding to a ballot is that a couple of members might resolve from wanting to take part, but if that doesn't happen, that's fine, we can have a ballot. So, Councillor Clues, was that your question or not?
Yes, the question was, can we move an amendment to add more names to the list instead of just having 4?
You can always move an amendment, but I would stress that I'd be reluctant to go down that track. I was actually hoping that we could have a committee of 3. I think once you get over 4, you're getting up into the realms of well, you might as well just have a special meeting of council, or you might as well or the whole council go along. I mean, the idea of committees is to that we divide up the work that's needed to be done, and we separate out, and we trust each other to do a good job, and then the final decision rests with council. But go ahead and move amendment if you feel the need.
Thank you, Mr. President. Notwithstanding that you've already debated the item, I would like to move that we...
Sorry, what was that, Councillor Clues?
So the reason I asked my question was to ensure there was no statutory requirement to have a limit of 4 people or anything like that. So that clearly not being the case, I would like to move.
Okay, well, wait. We haven't moved the substantive motion yet, so we'll move that. Get a mover for that. And then we did have a mover, didn't we? We have to go back onto standing orders. So we have a vote to go back to standing orders. That's carried unanimously. We're back in standing orders. The substantive motion has been moved. Yeah, we're waiting. Yeah, I'm getting there. Thanks everybody for all your help and support and advice. Okay, Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move that we add room for 2 more names to the list. I won't make debate. That's my amendment.
So would you be able to give us the wording, what the wording would involve for that, the change of that? So it's, you have to say things like it's point 4, item C.
Yeah, understood. My apologies. Item number 4, point C, simply add 2 more councillor, then underline.
So, Mr.
I see
Chairman,
it does also say 4.
If I can
we'll need to
interrupt,
say 6.
the amendment would be that the word 4 be deleted and replaced with the word 6, and that space be made for 2 other names. Mr. Chairman, if I may, the report does say that the committee is required to make recommendations to the full council. When you've got a committee of 6, it's actually a simple majority with relation to a whole council meeting, and it's often not recommended. If you're going over half of the council meeting, you may as well, I didn't mean to say it that way, you may appoint a committee of the whole, which is the whole council as a committee, but with only the power to make a recommendation to the council. So, 3 or 4 is plenty. Provided councillors are happy that recommendation is going to come to the full council, and that the part of the interview process will be undertaken by the full council. So there's no the committee is just involved in going through the rigour part of making sure that it's an open and accountable process, it's a fair and equitable process, all of those sort of things.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Councillor Clues, would you like to say something in support of your amendment?
Thank you, yes. Despite all the debate so far against it already, I think that having experienced the first attempt at this committee, that it would be of great benefit to have as many people that are interested to come along and be involved. I think that it's the committee's job to recommend only one person, not to recommend to council a handful of people for council to meet. And if all of council wish to be involved in that procedure and come along and meet everyone that's available, then I think that's great. I'm happy to stand corrected if the rest of council disagrees.
So, Councillor Clues, it's just occurred to me that if, from what you've said, that your amendment could say that the whole of council be appointed to the committee.
That wasn't my amendment, and I'm aware that at least 2 people didn't put their hand up and aren't interested.
Okay, right. I want to speak again. The seconder. Who's the seconder? Councillor Noonan. Do you want to speak in favour of the motion? The amendment, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was very grateful to be privy to some of the discussions, from just casual discussions, comments from those members who were on the committee, and it was very interesting from my perspective to realise that each councillor brought a different perspective to the people that the applicants who came, and they saw merits in different people, and yet they were still able to come down to a short list. I think that by having all of those councillors who are interested in this process involved, I think that I agree with Councillor Clues that it adds to the observation ability that we have in terms of finding the merits in various different candidates. So I support the motion, or the amendment to move the number to 6.
Thank you. I'll speak against the amendment. I think it's the flaw in the logic about 6 people put their hands up and 2 didn't is that those other 2, that show of hands was taken on the basis that there would be 4 on the committee. If we'd known that there was going to be 6 on the committee, we might have had a different view. And I, in fact, do have a different view. If there's going to be 6 on the committee, well, I'd like to be on the committee as well. And I think it should be all council on the committee, or back to 3. My preference would be 3. You either have a committee of 3 or you have the whole council on there, because as this acting CEO pointed out, if you have 6 on there, well, that's a majority of council. And if those 6 agree as a committee, well, then the decision of council has already effectively been made without the other 2 members of council being privy to the discussion. So I think I'm uncomfortable with that process. While I would be comfortable with a process which had a minority of councillors on the selection committee making a recommendation to full council. So I hope you can see my logic. So for that reason, I would urge you not to support the amendment, but if the amendment succeeds, I foreshadow another amendment to say, well, let's go with the full council everyone doing the full job all the way. Anyone else? So if so, we'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour of the current amendment? Those against? That's lost 2-6, I believe. So lost. So we go back to the substantive motion, which is default, and I think in that case we go back to the ballot. So,
Ballot papers and a ballot.
right. So let's have an adjournment for at least 10 minutes to allow for this ballot to proceed. And so we'll reconvene from the adjournment. I think that's all I have to do, reconvene. And we're at the point where we've had a ballot to decide the 4 members of the committee that will go on to the motion before we take a vote on it. Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The result of the ballot is that the membership of the CEO Selection Committee should be Councillors Kitchen, Mogg, Andrew and Shiano. Okay.
Whether we're at any further discussion, but I don't think there's going to be any further discussion. Is that right? Am I assuming correctly that we can go to a vote? Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. I think we can go now to... that's the end of the items. We now move to second public question time. Any questions from the floor? Any motions without notice, which requires an absolute majority? No, we'll move on. Any notices of motion for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of council in February? Councillor Mogg.
I'd like to put forward motion 19, notice of motion consideration at the next ordinary meeting. In what's read, the acting CEO be requested to prepare a report that A, invites, collates and summarises constructive submissions from the public, and number B, researches current trends in local government in regard to best practice, and C, investigates a variety of appropriate team building opportunities in order to present a series of recommendations to Council and to the Capel Shire Bushfire Advisory Board in relation to ways in which Council, the Bushfire Advisory Board and the various Capel Shire volunteer fire brigades might improve the processes of decision making and operational procedures. This motion I have circled amongst councillors and look forward to it coming to next meeting in February.
Thank you. Any other notices of motion for consideration at the next meeting? No. Let's see. I think that brings us to the conclusion of the items we have for consideration tonight, unless I'm very much mistaken. And we can close the meeting at 7:20. Thank you.